Geno Zoo. How can I help you?
Yes, I'm interested in coming to the zoo with 3 visitors from Japan. I know you've got all the animals, but my guests would really like to get up close to the animals, something different and unique. Do you offer special tours?
As a matter of fact, we do. We offer 3 tours. We have our Snakes Unlimited tour, we have a Birds Galore tour, and we also have a special behind-the-scenes tour which takes you to our animal hospital, where you get to see all the injured animals and how we look after them.
Oh, right. Well, one of the girls is studying to be a vet, so I think the behind-the-scenes tour would probably appeal to her. I think Tomo would like to hold a snake, and the birds sound fascinating too. Tell me, is it possible to do all 3 tours?
Yes, actually it is. The Snakes Unlimited tour kicks off at 10:15 and goes for an hour. The second tour with the birds start at around noon, and the last tour happens at 2:30. So it is possible to do all the tours during your visit to the zoo.
Great. Now, the only thing I want to know is, how much does all this cost?
Well, let's see. The admission price is $15.95 and the tours are extra. If you're interested in the snakes tour, it's going to cost $5.50, but that price includes being able to hold a python. The birds tour is where you get to hold an adult eagle. That one costs $6.50, and I think the third tour costs $9.50, yes. And you get to hand feed the baby kangaroos.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Yes, well, it sounds like a lot of fun. I think my guests will be really interested in all 3 of the tours. I'm unfamiliar with the layout of the zoo. Tell me, where do we need to meet for the first tour?
Well, all the tours, in fact, leave from the same spot, and that is just beside the cafe.
Okay. Now, as I said, they're from Japan, so English is not their first language. Is there anyone there that could help with translation if we need it?
Yes, there is an interpreter, but unfortunately she isn't available for all the tours, so they'll have to ask her any questions they may have after the tour. All the tours are given in English. I'm sure you'll find that the information will be readily understandable for your guests.
Okay, then.
As you know, everything is outdoors, apart from the third tour, so you might want to tell your guests to bring a hat and some sunscreen.
Thanks for the tip. You've been very helpful. Bye.
You're welcome. See you at the zoo.
That is the end of part 1. You now have 1 minute to check your answers to part 1. Part 2.
You will hear a talk for teachers about the Holylands Museum and Education Centre. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 17. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 11 to 17.
It's nice to see so many of you here. I'm going to tell you something about Hollylands, our facilities and activities, and the exhibitions we have coming up. I hope you'll find it interesting and bring your pupils along. For most of what we have to offer here, you can just turn up with your party. I'm pleased to say that recent work has meant that the whole centre is prepared for blind visitors. There are a couple of activities where we ask you to book a week in advance. We only have artists that you can watch painting at certain times, so we need notice of your coming for that. The other activity, requiring at least 7 days' notice, is the drama workshop. Again, it's a question of organising the staff at this end. But the video you work yourself, and so that's available any time. Another activity where you need to think ahead is the garden sculpture experience. But that's a question of the weather, which of course we can't control. Speaking of weather, we run a reduced range of facilities in the winter months. While the cafe and the shop provide welcome shelter from the cold and rain, I'm afraid our artist in residence scheme isn't run in the winter, so the studio is closed then. And the animals in the mini-zoo are kept indoors for warmth during the cold months, so that doesn't operate either. The adventure playground does, though make sure the children are wrapped up well. OK, now we run a programme of exhibitions through the year, so I'll tell you about the next few. Our current exhibition, Local Lives, ends on the 26th of August, and then one called History in Pictures starts on the 28th of August. This includes all sorts of objects and experiences from the past, such as farm machinery and some cars. We're sure children will love the chance to have a ride on an old bus. Next, we're running a show called People at Work, and this will open on the 19th of September. There will be pictures and videos depicting all sorts of jobs, from coal mining to flying planes. And there's a careers advice service available for everyone to consult. Following on from that show, we're putting on an exhibition called Land from Air. This starts on the 11th of November and includes hundreds of aerial photographs. A competition accompanies the show with the exciting prize of a balloon trip for 2. So we hope to see you at least one of the exhibitions.
Now you have some time to look at questions 18 to 20. Now listen to the rest of the talk and answer questions 18 to 20.
Now, the area occupied by Hollylands is rather large, and we don't want people to get lost, so I'll just give you a few pointers to help you orientate yourselves. So, whether you come by car or bicycle, you'll come in from the road. Cars then park to the left through the gates into the car park, and bikes to the right through the gates opposite. Cyclists in particular might be feeling thirsty at this point, and you can get a drink from the machine at the end of the bike park, halfway to the museum entrance. You can enjoy your drink in the picnic area, which is opposite the car park. For anyone who doesn't have a mobile phone, there are payphones at the far end of the picnic area. Over at the opposite end of the picnic area, across the path, are the toilets. Next to them, and just to the right of the entrance to the main museum, is the first aid room, which we hope you won't need, but it's there in case you do. If you have any queries, please go to the manager's office, which is behind the picnic area. And last but not least, you'll need to buy your tickets or show your group pass to the ticket office on the left of the museum entrance. OK, I'll pause there. Are there any questions at this point?
That is the end of Part 2. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 2. Part 3.
You will hear a discussion between students about a university assignment. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Well, as you know, we have to plan and conduct a survey. How should we organise this?
Well, I think we should divide up the task and then assign them to people who want to do them.
I think that's a good idea. I don't want to talk to people.
Seriously, if we divide up the tasks, no one will feel as though they are doing all the work. Even distribution, it's fair. I've done it this way before, and it's always worked out quite well.
Yes, I agree, but what if some tasks are longer than others? Then it doesn't seem fair.
Well, then we have to make sure we divide the tasks up according to time estimates. Some tasks may take longer, for example, the interview stage, and others shorter, like perhaps the layout of the survey form.
Okay then, Carol. That sounds like a great idea.
I seem to recall reading somewhere in our lecture notes that dividing up tasks was highly recommended for group work, so I feel good about what we're doing. Okay then, what are the tasks and who wants to do them?
Well, at the moment, I'm studying layout and design, so if nobody has any objections, I'd like to work out the design of the survey. I'll have this finished by mid-March, the 23rd to be exact. I've got other assignments to do around that time.
That's fine with me. I hate design and layout. What about organising the questions? Someone's going to have to do this. Could I? I promise to be all finished by mid-March. What do you think, Carol?
Yes, that all sounds good. I guess someone's going to have to do the questioning. Why don't I conduct the survey? The assignment is due on April the 3rd, so I will have the survey completed by late March, just in time for the oral report.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Yes, about that oral report. Does anyone have any notes from last lecture? There were some good ideas about how to give a good oral report.
Yes, I happen to have them right here. There were some very helpful suggestions given by Professor Thompson. Should we take a moment to go through them?
Yeah.
Yes, yes, please.
Well, firstly, the report itself is due after the survey has been handed in. I believe our group will be presenting it on the 12th of April.
12th of April? That's the date of my accounting exam.
Anyway, Professor Thompson said we mustn't speak longer than 20 minutes, or less than 15. He said when it comes to assigning grades, he will be looking for speakers to maintain eye contact with the audience. In other words, don't just stand up and read the presentation.
That's been my problem in the past. I spend all my time looking at my notes and the audience gets bored.
Yes, that's right. Another point to remember is to make good use of gestures. Standing there like a robot is also very boring for the class. Another thing to consider is visual aids. He said we should include a variety of them, things like overhead transparencies, handouts. We can use the whiteboard, DVDs or video were also suggested.
Okay, let's decide who wants to do what.
That is the end of Part 3. You now have 30 seconds to check your answers to Part 3. Part 4.
You will hear a talk about waste and waste treatment. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen to the first part of the talk and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'll be talking about the issue of waste, which has become an immense problem in today's society. We face huge challenges in terms of reducing its creation in the first place, and then in dealing with it when it has been created. Now, the model of nature would be our ideal, a completely cyclical system in which no excess waste is generated that can't be processed by itself. However, we humans have proved, despite our apparent intelligence and ingenuity, quite incapable of achieving this. Where did it all go wrong? We have evidence that in ancient Greece and Rome, governments operated municipal waste collection, and a huge Stone Age mound was identified some years ago in Norway as waste disposal. So we can see that people have been generating waste for a very long time indeed. However, during the Dark Ages, sophisticated municipal waste processing disappeared. The medieval answer to waste was to throw it out of the window. But this waste, apart from broken pottery and a few metal objects, was largely organic. This meant, of course, that it was quickly absorbed into the environment by the natural processes of decay. However, many concerned people, such as doctors, claimed that this created health problems, although it wasn't until science produced convincing evidence of the connection between rubbish and disease that governments began to see the importance of dealing with the problem effectively. Unfortunately, their response has remained slower than the generation of waste. It is very hard to deal with waste that won't melt into the environment, as so many of our modern consumer goods won't. And that's why the invention of plastic has caused the worst headache for the environment. It's more than nature can deal with. In order to address the root of the problem of waste, we need to think about what has made the quantity of waste accelerate in growth. I'd identify three main reasons. As many countries became industrialized, we saw the advent of mass manufacturing. This has been enormously damaging, as it has greatly increased the amount of things on the planet's surface which don't go away by themselves. Closely related to this is packaging, necessary for transporting things around the world, but then extremely difficult to get rid of properly. And a third aspect to the problem has been disposable goods. We have become accustomed to so many things being to use and then discard that we find it hard to imagine life without them. And yet we spare little thought for where they go when we do discard them. Right now, let's move on from where all this waste comes from to what is done with it all now it's here. Different countries deal with waste differently. Of course, each country also changes what it does, so the figures for waste treatment I've got here are likely to change in the future. Let's look at municipal solid waste, or MSW. MSW is important to consider because it's effectively a measurement of consumerism, how much waste people produce that goes beyond the absolute basic requirements in life to eat and drink. One of the main ways of dealing with MSW is incineration, burning it. This is adopted variously around the world. The UK burns relatively little waste, as does the US, while Denmark burns about half of all waste, and Japan uses this method for as much as 3/4. These are broad brushstrokes, of course, because an important issue is how efficient and clean the burning process is. Another major form of waste treatment is using landfill sites, basically burying the waste in the earth. Currently, this method is the dominant process used in the UK at over 80%, and is also heavily used in Germany and in the US, while densely populated and mountainous countries such as Switzerland and Japan dispose of relatively little this way. A third and much better way of dealing with waste is to recycle it, turning it back into more things we need. It must be said that much depends here on whether further waste is generated by the recycling processes themselves. The UK and Japan have rather poor records in recycling, while Switzerland tops the table in this respect, and reasonably impressive levels are achieved by Denmark and Germany. I really hope that if we all gathered here again 10 years from now, these figures would be much higher. Time and a lot of effort will tell.